crosses alone. Our girls that are fatherless are seeking love in all the wrong places. They can't carry those crosses alone. Our seniors are aging without family. They can't carry those crosses. And the family that's caring for them can't carry those crosses alone. For heaven's sakes, even Jesus had Simon help him with the cross. Don't be a Christian who doesn't want the cross. If you don't want to be a Christian, then denounce your baptism. Pursue excellence. This is a time to suffer excellently, beloved. Hallelujah. Maybe what we need is a good example.
All right.
So I'm glad this is Womanhood Month.
All right.
Because women, especially black women, know how to suffer. I'll get to a good biblical woman in just a minute.
All right.
But when the chips are down, black women can take suffering like it's nothing but a word. As long as we have men in our lives who are partners and not oppressors,
Come on.
we can do it. As long as house duties don't overshadow Jesus' duties, we're down for the count.
Come on. Come on.
Come here, Ida Wells Barnett.
Yeah.
Now, this sister lived during a period when the lynchings of blacks was widespread. When she heard about the lynchings of 3 men, Moss, McDowell, and Stewart, she took up the cross of her entire community.
Yeah.
What did they do? What did the men do? They just tried to help themselves. They started a business in Memphis called the People's Grocery. It became a gathering place for blacks. Moss was a postman, so he gave them the capital that they needed. His partners worked during the day, and according to one historian, whites resented the business because it was taking business from the white grocer. So the white grocer initiated attacks, and the People's Grocery Store was ready. The black men shot 3 white men. And the short story is that the 3 black store owners were taken from their jail cells, put on a train to the next town, and lynched. Tom Moss and his wife were personal friends of Ida Wells Barnett. She was a journalist, and so for the next several years, decades, she, Barnett, with a pistol on her side and a pen in her hand, she tore down every bigoted lie against black men and women that whites used to defend lynchings. In her newspaper, she recorded the names of every lynched black person. She called it her red record. Not one death went unnamed that she could name. She went to the scene of the lynchings and she interviewed witnesses. When she purchased her pistol for self-defense, she said, "I intended to sell my life as dearly as possible." In other words, she said, if you want some of this, it's going to cost you. Lynching, she said, was an excuse to get rid of Negroes who acquired wealth and property, to keep the race terrorized, to keep the nigger down. But she didn't carry that cross alone. She was aided and supported by other Christians who saw the need and took up the cross. But if you want to be more theological and biblical about the thing, we got to take a page out of Miss Barnett's book, but we go to the Bible. We got to go to the mother of Jesus, Sister Mary. Who could blame her if she wanted the resurrection but not the cross? Who could blame Mary for wanting to skip Thursday through Saturday and go straight to Sunday, where the loss of her son would have some meaning? She probably wanted to do what Job's friends advised, curse God and die. What was God thinking? God sent an angel to announce the birth, the good news of her immaculate pregnancy. She offered up such a beautiful praise prayer and shared it with everyone. It ended up in the Gospel of Luke. She endured persecution because of her pregnancy. She defended Jesus to all those scribes and Pharisees. She went from town to town with him, teaching and healing. I can only imagine her say to God as she watched Jesus bleed to death, "You did all that for this?" So I stopped writing. I said, Lord, that's all you gave me. I can't write anymore until you give me some more. You got to tell me what to say to Mary. So I put my sermon back into my briefcase and went to see if my car was ready. Most of the sermon had already been given at that time. God sent me to Mary at the cross, and then God was silent. So that's where I left Mary. A woman carrying her own cross at the foot of a cross. As I walked back into the dealership, the Lord took me to our beach walk 2 weeks ago. This was a beach that I knew well. Rod and I had been there a couple of times before, and each time I went, I would jog from and walk to our hotel, to the last hotel on the beach. So that's what I was doing. When I reached the last hotel again, I stopped. I thought to myself, I should turn around. I had my mace in my hand. Most people were still asleep. The few people who were also on the beach would not be able to see or hear me if something happened. I should turn around. And I heard the Spirit say, isn't that what you say when you don't want to suffer for something? But Lord, this is unknown territory to me, I said. But if you are my disciple, you will have to go in some places you thought you'd never go. You're just going to have to trust. So I kept walking and talking to God in this unknown territory. I discovered there wasn't much beach left. There were some marshes being protected. There was a body of water that separated this beach from a nearby beach. Now God said, you know this territory too. You could have gotten hurt, but that was a calculated risk. You see, when we take up our crosses, beloved, or we help someone else take up their cross, that's a calculated risk. God said, tell my people, you don't take a risk for me in vain. You don't take a risk for me in vain. Okay, so back to the dealership. So there was Mary in the sermon. She was taking a calculated risk for God. She was in unknown territory, and it was terrifying. She did get hurt, and so did her child. With sermon and briefcase hanging over my hip, I said, okay, God, well, thank you for reminding me about that beach talk. But again, what do you have to say to Mary at the cross? I walked inside the building. Hi, is my car ready? Yes, ma'am, your slip is inside. Just then a little girl ran in front of me to the door and fell down. Daddy, she cried, and tears fell. The man picked her up and struggled to hold the door for me. No, thank you, children first. So I held the door for him. He took her to the playroom, and I walked over to the counter, to the cashier, and he came to stand in line behind me, watching his two girls play. She called to him again. He left to go get her and brought her back, and I looked down and I smiled when they came back in line. How old is she? I said. He said, 2 years old. I said, oh, I have a 3-year-old. Just those two girls? He said, no, I got 4 girls. I said, oh my God, 4 girls. Bless you. How old are they? 12, 7, 2 and 1.5 weeks. Then I walked up to the counter to speak to the cashier. Sadler, oil change, $26.59, the cashier said. I looked back to the man and I said, may you have all the wisdom and strength you need to raise 4 girls, and you will, because God will give it to you. He said, I hope so. Then the father turned to me and he said, did you hear her calling me? I said, no. He smiled and continued. She opened the playroom door and said, it's bleeding. And then the father smiled like he knew something his daughter didn't know. Just then she lifted up her dress to show me her knee. It was an open wound, 3 inches long, with the flesh showing and the blood beginning to drip. And Mary looked over the counter with great concern. The cashier looked over the counter with great concern. And I stared at that knee with concern too. Mary, the cashier said, "Sir, would you like a Band-Aid?" And the father said, are you listening? The father said, "Don't worry." That's not all he said, but that was the first thing he said. Don't worry. You got to see and hear with your third ear now this morning. Mary is at the crucifixion. She wants the resurrection that Jesus foretold, but not the cross. The Father said, "Don't worry." It is a time to suffer, and it is. Things might look pretty bad to us. It's bleeding, and we don't know how to stop it. 2 million human beings in jail, 1 million black, another 4 million under the jurisdiction of the courts. It's bleeding, beloved. Don't worry. 15% of the population uses up 60% of the health care. Somebody's suffering. Bearing a cross alone is bleeding, Daddy. Don't worry. 10,000 people left in the convention center in Asheville. It's bleeding. Don't worry. 50% of all new AIDS cases, black folk. It's bleeding. Cancer has moved to the lymph nodes. She says she wants a divorce. The funeral has to be planned. Don't worry. But I'm so ashamed of this sin. It's bleeding. Sir, do you want a Band-Aid? Don't worry. The father said. That's not always said. If you want to turn things around, it's a time to suffer. You see, beloved, a few months ago I saw and I heard from an angel of the Lord, and I am here to tell you today, I am a witness, there is a resurrection on the other side of your cross. There's a resurrection on the other side of the cross you're carrying for Jesus. The Father said, "Don't worry." But that's not all he said. I just want you to know before I sit down that that thing you're wrestling with won't be the end of you. It won't scar you for your life. All your sunshine won't fade. You've got enough love for your family and the family in need. Ask Ida Wells Barnett. It's time to suffer excellently. Praise God. If you can't see God, you ain't near no suffering. Because that's where all the miracles happen. That's where people get set free and delivered at the point of suffering. Sometimes we need to take a step back from the wound. Try to see the picture as God is seeing it. Maybe God keeps smiling when we suffer because God knows something we don't know. Maybe God sees something happening we don't see. Daddy, it's bleeding. Sir, would you like a Band-Aid? Don't worry, the father said. Then he smiled and added, "It's just a scratch." Beloved, if we want to pursue excellence, we're going to have to learn how to suffer excellently. Don't worry about what may come. You're taking calculated risks. Not in vain. In the whole scheme of things, when it's all said and done, if you just step back from it a little bit, if you try to see the opportunity and surrender, resurrection is certain in this life and in the next life. It's just a scratch. Let all the saints of the church recognize. It's just a scratch.